Going from the crowd to the field. The story of Vince Papale, as seen in the movie Invincible, Mark Wahlberg. It's an awesome movie. And today we're going to unpack the reality that he goes from hanging out with his buddies, struggling, to then ending up in an NFL locker room. How would you respond if you were one of those buddies? We'll talk about it next. It's Unpacking It. Welcome to the Unpackin It Podcast, where we unpack parallels, metaphors, and topics in sports and movies that relate to life and faith. I'm Bryce Johnson in downtown Mount Holly, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, joined in studio by Trip Smith. On today's episode, we're talking all about the movie Invincible. It is our fourth installment of our summer sports movie series. Hopefully you enjoyed the other podcasts and the other movies that we discussed. Miracle, Field of Dreams, and F1. And so it's always fun each July when we do this. And so I hope you've enjoyed it as a listener. Any suggestions for next year? Feel free to reach out, Bryce at unpackinit.com. Leave your comments. And of these four movies, which one is your favorite? And Trip and I are also going to get into a conversation today of the four stars in this movie, or of these four movies. Who is your favorite? Kurt Russell, Brad Pitt, Kevin Costner, and Mark Wahlberg. So some major movie studs for sure. All right, so a couple things to let you know about. It is fantasy football season. I just had my first draft this past weekend, and so we are gearing up for Fantasy Football Fellowship. I hope that you will consider incorporating your league this season with Fantasy Football Fellowship. You can go to fantasyfootballfellowship.com. If you are at a church that's looking for kind of a way to get guys connected and rally some men at your church, check it out in that context as well. So fantasyfootballfellowship.com. And then also, as a podcast listener, make sure you're subscribed so you're getting the weekly Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast. It's already rolling, and we will be with you through Christmas. So always fun each week, recapping the fantasy weekend, but then also, and then right now preparing for drafts, but then also talking faith and life through the lens of fantasy football. So always a good time there. Also, make sure you are subscribed to our devotional. We send this out through email Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's the Unpacking It devotional. What we discuss on this podcast, we also write about. And so you can read those. You can forward those to friends. And so check that out, unpackinit.com. We're grateful for our sponsor, Upward Sports. You can visit upward.org/unpack, upward.org/unpack. And be sure to sign up this fall to get a sports ministry going at your church. And so we appreciate their support of this show. All right, Trip, this was a fun movie. I looked at the time of it. I go, all right, hour 45. And then I'm watching it. I think I got up one time to go to the bathroom, but I got to toward the end, I go, I wonder how much longer this is. And there was only 11 minutes left. And I was like, oh, wow, that flew by. I was into it. It was fun. I am a fan of Invincible. I've seen it, at least a couple times, but it was a treat. And it's Disney-fied, but it is tremendous. I loved it. What about you?
Oh, I'm intrigued by your last point about it being Disney-fied. I want to hear more what that means for you. I thought this was another really enjoyable movie, and I actually thought it paired pretty well with Miracle. So we bookended our summer series here with two sports movies that are based on real historic events and historic figures. Yes. And they're both kind of making a cultural sort of social commentary of the time that they're happening. So it was kind of cool to bookend it. I thought it was the most similar to Miracle of our four movies that we watched this summer, and I really enjoyed it. And part of the reason that I enjoyed it is I just think it's difficult not to enjoy a movie that Mark Wahlberg is in. He plays the sort of everyman, just working his his butt off, just going as hard as he can, about as well as anybody that I can remember. And man, in this movie, he just gets pummeled and he just keeps getting back up. And I loved how his perseverance and his just hard work and dogged sort of motivation came through in this movie.
So when we talk about sports movies on this show, as sports fans, there are certain times where maybe we know the true story better. And I remember a couple years ago, we did Moneyball. And so we kind of talked about the true story and the movie. And of course, Miracle, we're talking about the true story of the Olympic team winning gold. And so with this one, with Vince Papale, this is such a wonderful sports story. And there's some connection for me personally, because my dad played high school football for the same coach that Vince Papale played for in high school. And so my dad was sort of in the mix with Vince Papale. He came and I think spoke to his team. And so anyway, so there's a Philly, and my family's from Philly. So I love this story from that standpoint. And then as a sports fan, the idea that a 30-year-old fan is sitting in the stands, I think they had season tickets, at least in the movie, it made it seem that way. They're watching, the final game of the season. That's how the movie starts. The Eagles stink. And then opening week, the following year, you're on the team. I mean, it's one thing if you're like 12 and you're Con Knipple and you're a Duke fan, and then one day you play for Duke. But when you're like 30 and you end up on the team, it's funny to think about. So I love that element to it.
It is pretty incredible that it really happened. And it's one of those things where I liked watching this as a big NFL fan. I mean, hey, way to queue up, way to schedule these movies for us, Bryce, so that this one launches us right into the real football season, which is coming up fast. That's right. Yeah. So this got me excited about football. And I was wondering how much of this is an accurate representation of like how miserable the stands were in those Phillies games at the time, how bad the locker rooms were for the Phillies. I mean, those locker rooms were disgusting. And it seems like the sort of story that probably couldn't happen today because of how sort of advanced the NFL has become in real life. But what an amazing story for the guy to be sort of a product of the city, had never played sort of organized football really at any level, or at least not since he did play in high school, but had never played in college. And I looked at him, he was a bigger guy. I mean, it was, I saw on Pro Football Reference, I had Pro Football Reference up the whole time I was watching this movie, how much of this is true, how much of this is accurate. And he was like 6'2", about 200 pounds, which I imagine was probably pretty large for like a special teams wide receiver type guy back then. So he definitely had some athletic ability that maybe was underrepresented in the movie, although they did talk about it. Yeah, Wahlberg's a little shorter. He's out there playing in kind of the car lot with his buddies, and I think the real life Vince Papale seemed to be a little bit better of an athlete relative to the NFL players of that time. But it's an amazing story. 30 years old, not 22 years old, 30 years old, and he played for 3 seasons.
Yes, well, that's the other thing, and this struck me as well. The idea that we think of a player who he had a cup of coffee in the NFL or a cup of coffee in the NBA. That's a saying. And over the years, I have appreciated that more and more. Just the reality of how difficult it is to make it professionally. The best player in high school, at your small school, your high school, may or may not play in college. The very best player. And then the very best player at your college may or may not make it to the NFL. And so it's just so difficult. So even if somebody has a tryout, even if somebody goes to a training camp, because sometimes I probably at one point would think, this guy's claiming to be a former NFL player, like just over the years, different players, former NFL player. He played 3 days of training camp. Dude, that's a huge deal. So then to think about Vince Papale, 30-year-old, going from, playing, I think in real life he was playing some semi-pro, but to go from the fans as in the crowd to then in an NFL locker room, dude, if he had one day out there, it's a big deal. To get one hit from an NFL guy is a big deal. And so the respect that we need to have as fans, and then specifically with this story in mind, I just was reminded of that reality.
And they name that reality in multiple scenes in the movie, which I'm glad that they do. I mean, really one of the major themes of this movie, if not the theme of this movie, is all of these buddies who are in a difficult place in terms of the economy of their city. their jobs, and they're hopeless, right? It's a group of guys who are hopeless, and this one figure sort of becomes all of their hope in the movie. And they say over and over again, even if you're only out there for an hour, that's a big deal to our community. I know that's what we're going to talk about in our kind of breakout time here today, but they name the importance of him just being out there and just giving it his all. And then the fact that it worked out in such an incredible way. And it really does seem to have come down to he worked so hard and he played so hard and he wanted it so badly that he was able to stand out as a leader of this Eagles team in some of their worst seasons of this kind of generation of football.
Because in real life, he was a captain for the special teams, which is a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
So one thing I do want to talk about in the movie, we see Dick Vermeil, Greg Kinnear, who's a great actor.
Love
too.
Greg Kinnear.
Yeah,
yes,
he's great. Yeah, so awesome as Dick Vermeil, and Dick Vermeil's sort of a recognizable head coach. Had success with the Eagles, but then finally won with Kurt Warner and the Rams, and remember the emotions, and he's just a character. But anyway, in the movie, so Dick Vermeil announces, "Hey, we're doing these open public tryouts." And I just got such a kick out of this. And, I'm sure there's some truth to this, but if you did something like this, you're getting every goofball, every fan that's going to try to show up. But the guy in the cape, the big goofy guy in the cape who's like, yeah, I played football in high school and, I was on the line and all that. And he's wearing a cape to an NFL tryout. And again, it's probably Disneyfied, but that was hilarious. But I was thinking, should more NFL teams do this? Maybe. But you know who absolutely should do it? Colleges. Colleges need to find their walk-ons from kids that are there, students that are there. Like, it creates a fun, just sort of public rallying cry type of thing.
Some schools do that, right?
Which they do. Yeah. You'll find, our 14th guy on the basketball team or whatever, we found him. He's walking around. He's 6'5", and we figured it out. But anyway, so I thought that was a funny scene. And then for Vince to actually be able to stand out, of course, is a significant deal.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed the news anchor. It was kind of along for the journey with Vince. He was very funny. And even he was sort of cynical about the whole thing. And then as he started to kind of track with, they did a great job of showing in a minor way throughout the movie how he became more positive because of Vince Papale and his rise up to the team and involvement with the team. So it's just a great way of tracking that whole thing. But there were some good comedic moments, especially in that tryouts scene. There were a few, just some big old guys looked like they've been drinking beer all day long, trying to go through some of those quick footwork, like net setups. I don't know what you call those. The ladder, the rope ladder.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Trip on that.
Seriously, man. Seriously. Yeah. So it was funny. I will say, I mean, it's worth noting to your point about Dick Vermeil. I mean, this team, the first season that Papale was on the team, they were still bad. They were still a bad team. They won 4 games that season, 5 games the next season, and then they jumped up to 9, and that was his last year on the team. It took Dick Vermeil a while to turn this team around, and I think he got some time and some trust that you probably wouldn't get in today's NFL as well. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing too. I like how in both this movie and Miracle, and this is sort of a trope in sports movies, the coach who's not sure if his plan is going to work, and the sort of steady wife who supports him but gives him kind of the key advice in a few key moments.
Yes,
I mean, we had that in
good.
Miracle and in this movie. I really enjoy the husband-wife interactions in some of these sports movies. But both this guy got a timeline that you probably wouldn't get in today's NFL. It took him a while to turn it around. And one of the things I will say is that the way that the Disneyfication of this movie, where they make the movie appear like things were a little bit more victorious and positive than they actually were. There are a few key moments that they do that. But
you want to feel good when you're watching.
You want to feel good,
movie.
and I like them sort of romanticizing it a little bit. I'm not against that at all, but they lead you to believe in the credits when they're showing some of the real facts about the Eagles that Vermeil went on to win the Super Bowl with the Eagles in the 80-81 season. That's not the case. Yeah, they made it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
they made it to the Super Bowl. He didn't get his Super Bowl until 1999 when he was with the St. Louis Rams. So there is a little bit of a romanticization about what happened here.
I like the words we're making up.
Things were not all bright. I'm sure it was still pretty brutal to be the Eagles coach during these 3 seasons when they were winning 4 and 5 games. But Papale clearly played a role in turning things around there.
So speaking of Dick Vermeil, in the movie, it was portrayed during that open tryout where a couple of the star players come out to say hello. And it appeared that was the first time he was interacting with those top players. Which was interesting, but he sort of downplayed them,
right?
And basically said, like, you're fighting for your own job. And I wonder what the right approach is. I don't know if that was the true, who knows? But just in general, in the NFL, when you take over a losing team, and there are always good players. Every team has good players, even when you're horrible. How you approach those guys, like how important is it to get those guys bought in? And then how important is it to humble those guys,
right,
and remind them, you guys won a couple games last year. You guys stink. Like, everybody's fighting for their job here.
Yeah.
We're starting over. This is a fresh start. To me, that's got to be really hard as a head coach to walk that line, especially when you're an unproven coach, when you're a new coach. It's one thing if you're a Super Bowl winning coach, you come in, you can get away with that. But Dick Vermeil came from UCLA, and in the movie, that's kind of what the setup was there. And there was another line in the movie where he said, I don't have it in front of me, but anyway, he was basically saying, I play no favorites. He said, I play no favorites. And he said that later on during camp, where everybody's fighting for a roster spot. And I do love that. I absolutely think coaches need to look at, hey, who's out here, regardless of when you were drafted, what you did in college, who's playing the best, and who's all in, who's ready to go. That's who we're going to go fight and win games with.
It is fun. I mean, we talked about this a little bit with Miracle as well, but the sort of nobody's job is safe kind of mentality. I think we love that in sports movies because it's kind of the other side of the coin of the underdog story.
Yeah.
Right. If you're going to have an underdog story, you got to have some of the top dogs who are humbled, who are put in their place or even kicked off the team. And we love that in sports movies. It's just like when you're building a real sports franchise, especially a professional sports franchise, you just have guys on the team who are drafted early and who are better than everybody else. And you sort of have to do some of the relationship management to keep those guys happy and keep them motivated in a different sort of way. It doesn't always come up in these movies. And then I made this comment a few weeks ago, but I just love how so many of these movies have no category for like the recovery and the physical well-being of the players that they show in these movies. I mean, these guys are absolutely beating the tar out of each other at practice. And especially Vince is just getting mauled at practice. And a big point of this movie is you get up one more time, then you get knocked down. It's worth remembering that a lot of players from this era of football have significant lingering injuries, including some brain injury, right? It's like there is a place in modern sports for recovery and healthily protecting your bodies. I was amazed. Did they really used to play 6 preseason games in the NFL?
I made a note of that.
And play their starters, right? And it's like now you barely see the starters for the 3 preseason games that they really play. It's wild how the NFL has changed over the last 50 years to protect these players' bodies. And I think overall for the better. There's just no category in these physical sports movies for like, it's always the coach is going to get you out there on 2-a-days and make you run until you puke and beat each other until your ribs are broken and bruised, and I find that a funny theme in a lot of these movies.
Yeah. And speaking of the actual like footage, I found the camera angle or the lighting for the actual like stadium was very unique. But I think I liked it. Like
me too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit
very dramatic.
Yes. Yeah. The rest of the movie was
we didn't see a lot of action, and I'm okay with that. It wasn't really about on the field. To your point, during training camp, we saw some of the big hits and stuff. But when they actually went to the stadium, I just found that to be a very unique view. And just, this movie's 20 years old. I don't know. It looks almost more fancy than what I would have thought 20 years ago.
I think because I noticed that especially in the first Cowboys game that they show.
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of the movie is, this movie lives right on the line when they started to use computer animation and CGI more in movies. And so a lot of the walking around like gritty, grungy Philadelphia is intentionally sort of like it feels raw and like underproduced.
Yep.
But then that football game, I think, had some CGI in it. There's one play where they show the quarterback dropping back to pass. And I'm 100% sure that was up against a green screen and they did some polishing of that. And so that's part of what's going on there. But I kind of liked it. It was kind of cool. It was sort of like the game coming into modernity almost. And so, yeah, there was some cool how they try to portray the 70s, making this film in 2006 when some of that technology was coming around was enjoyable to me. But it did make it feel a little disjointed, or like it was two different movies there. And I know you're big on the sports action in these movies and how it's portrayed and how excellent it looks. And I think it looks pretty good in this movie. I will say, you keep going. I have one minor thought about the sports action. If you're going, there's the first moment at practice where Vince Papale catches a pass and gets hit in the air after catching that pass. Whoever the stunt guy was in that, if you watch the way he comes down, I'm pretty sure that guy's going to need hip surgery. Like, he just tore his ACL. Like, there are a few stuntman hits in this movie where I'm like, I think there were legitimate injuries, and he comes down on his left leg and torques it in this weird way where I'm like, I don't think that guy was walking away from that. Like, there were some crazy hits in this movie.
No, that's funny you say that. I was reading about the true story, the filming of this movie. The filming of this movie. Mark Wahlberg wasn't supposed to get hit in one of the scenes, and it was a local college player was sort of the stunt man, and he hit Mark Wahlberg way harder than he was supposed to, and they sent that kid home.
Wow.
They sent him home, but they kept it in the movie. They kept that hit, and it might be the one you're referring to, but
they
kept them in the movie.
There is a scene in the Rain football game where one of the dudes out there with them who has no speaking lines is just one of the sort of stand-in guys. He comes up to be on the line, and he is huge. He looks like a rugby player. I mean, this guy looks stout, and I bet it's the guy who hit. In fact, it might have been the guy who hit Mark Wahlberg later on. Where I'm like, what is this guy doing out here with these actors? This is like what do you call people that come for the day for shooting like that? Why is that word slipping my mind? This is a
extra.
An extra, yes. This is an extra who showed up and was ready to play some real football. And I bet that's the guy who got sent back home. I love that story. That makes me like that movie and that scene more. That's awesome.
Wahlberg's tough enough to handle it, but yeah. Great. Hey, great scene. It turned out great. We're going to use it in the movie, but don't ever do that again. Go home.
You're out of here. Yeah,
you're done for the day. That. So a couple other just quick hitters. This wasn't necessarily a funny movie. If I think about maybe my favorite sports movie, it's Remember the Titans. And that's also a Disney movie. What I love about Remember the Titans are all the layers that it has. I didn't find that Invincible had a ton of layers as far as music, comedy. There's a little bit of a love romance there with Elizabeth Banks and Mark Wahlberg. But so I give the edge to, if I'm thinking about just total complete movies, there was a few things that maybe it was just that it was lacking.
Yeah.
But then, so when I said at the beginning of the show, oh, it's Disneyfied, I don't even know necessarily exactly what that meant, but every sports movie that's put on the big screen gets added elements to it. And I did read that the Elizabeth Banks character Janet, Vince really did marry Janet, not a Giants fan. So that was added for a little tension and drama. So you got all these Eagles fans, and then this woman shows up, and she's a New York Giants fan, of course, the big rival. So that was interesting. But as far as even though there wasn't a ton of comedy, my favorite lines, and I don't know why I thought this was so funny, but Dick Vermeil asks Vince Papale, "Do you mind if I ask you how old you are?" And I've never thought about that question. Do you mind if I ask you how old you are? And then Mark Wahlberg's response was, do you mind if I ask you how old you are?
Yeah.
And
I loved that.
Isn't that, I don't know why I thought that was so funny, but it's not, hey, how old are you? Do you mind answering? Do you mind if I ask you? So that caught me. That caught me this time.
He asked him. He was like, I'm not going to answer you.
Yeah. Do you mind? No, I don't mind that you ask. I don't mind that you ask me that. Well, but I do mind answering that.
And the delivery there from Mark Wahlberg is just perfect on that line. And that, to your point about Remember the Titans, I'm not sure. Remember the Titans is a funnier movie, but so much of that is the way that Denzel Washington is able to deliver sort of charismatic, cutting one-liners in that movie and some key moments. And you got to, you got to let your leading man cook. If I had one criticism that I have of this movie is Mark Wahlberg plays sort of this understated, quiet. He doesn't want to be the center of attention. He doesn't actually talk very much in this movie. Like, I would say that the number of words said by your leading character in this movie is probably lower than your average sports movie. Most of what he does is sort of his silent performance at practice and on the field. But you got to let Mark Wahlberg cook just a little bit more, because I do think that he has the charisma to pull off more of those lines, and it could have been funnier if they'd let him have a few more kind of quirky interactions like that. But I loved that line. That was a great line.
And then my other favorite one, Greg Kinnear and his wife, or Dick Vermeil and his wife, are interacting, and he goes, I'll sleep in December. And then his wife goes, not if you make the playoffs.
Great little line.
That was good. But I also started thinking about just how crazy these coaches are. That's their mentality. I'll sleep in December. I'll sleep after the season.
Here's something I want to ask you, Bryce. When you watch movies like this, what happened to me is I always think to myself, I can get up tomorrow and work a lot harder than I have up till this point in my life. I got to be Vince Papale. I got to be the NFL coach. Again, it goes back to my point about rest and recovery. And as we're sort of transitioning, I know, to our breakout here, it's this is not our topic for the day, but I do think that rest and an appropriate slowing down is something like a biblical mandate, or at least some serious biblical wisdom. And these movies they're always work harder, gut it out. And everything you hear about somebody who makes it to the highest level here is they really have to sacrifice almost everything else in their life to be successful at this level. But I always watch movies like this, and I'm like, yeah, I can be the Dick Vermeil of pastors. I can work 18 hours a day for the next 6 months. And life doesn't work that way. But that's another thing that in these sports movies, I always feel motivated to work a lot harder than I have before.
It's good. It's good. Well,
and maybe that's a good thing up to a
little
point.
Boost. Just up a little to a point.
Yeah. There's got to be some good rest there too. Yeah.
All right. So we're wrapping up our series. We've done 4 movies, 4 stars, 4 studs in leading actors in these movies. Give me your ranking. Favorite actor of the 4, favorite movie of the 4s of the 4 that we've done. The 4s.
Okay. Favorite movie is easily F1.
Oh,
I'll say we talked about it. I'm not I think that Miracle and Invincible are just solid, enjoyable. They're just B movies, better than a B minus, just a solid B, And then we talked about, I'm not actually sure that I believe that Field of Dreams is a good movie. It's just sort of.
I think we're in agreement. It's the 4th.
Yeah. Well, it's iconic. I mean, if you ask me which one I wanted to watch again soon, Field of Dreams would be at the bottom of that list. That said, I really enjoy Kevin Costner, and so he's higher on the list in terms of the leading. So I'm going to say that F1 was both, I thought, just objectively the best movie, and I still think that Brad Pitt is my favorite character. But in our film series this summer, one of the upshots for me was just remembering I really enjoy Mark Wahlberg and I really enjoy Kevin Costner. So Kurt Russell's probably at the bottom of the list, even though I think he's great. He's my 4th in terms of leading men. And Brad Pitt's definitely at the top of the list. But I enjoyed all 4 of these movies for different reasons. And would recommend anybody who hasn't seen any one of them, you got to check them out at least once. But F1 is it's clearly the best movie of the 4 to me.
To you.
Yeah.
To you.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go, which is a surprise to me because I didn't remember it to be this great. But I think Miracle. I think Miracle is my
top
favorite
movie. There are some great sports movie moments in Miracle. Okay, so that's number 1.
I go Miracle, then Invincible, then F1, then Field of Dreams.
Wow. Okay.
So of the 4 that we did, that would be my 4. And I did like F1, but I don't know. This goes to then my top of the actors: Mark Wahlberg, Kevin Costner,
Wahlberg at the
Brad
top.
Pitt. I guess Brad Pitt, then Kurt Russell.
Wow, you're tempted to put Brad Pitt at the bottom.
Yeah.
You and I are different on this stuff, and I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I think one of the things that I've learned about you
I love Mark Wahlberg.
Doing this summer movie series with you for the first time, I think one of the things that I've learned with you is you have a great appreciation for these just solid sports movies that kind of check every box of what you're looking for in a sports movie. I sort of enjoy F1 that it subverts some of those expectations and some of those themes. Wahlberg is such a solid kind of just every man. You just want to be buddies with that guy. You want to go down to the bar and hang out with him. Whereas Brad Pitt is a little bit more kind of unapproachable and has been this sort of A-list star for so long and kind of this pretty boy, like iconic character that you and I are looking for different things in these movies. I just think the recommendations that you have made, and I just enjoyed Miracle way more than I thought that I would, and had seen Invincible before, but not for a long time. So it's funny how we're different on this stuff, man. But I like your ranking there. I can see where you're coming from.
So one of my favorite impersonations is Andy Samberg on SNL doing Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg talks to animals. Say hi to your mother for me. Say hi to your mother for me. So that's funny. So but I'm a Mark Wahlberg fan.
That's good.
You know, you think, gosh, Italian Job, The Other Guys,
he's great, man.
Shooter, Deepwater Horizon, Patriots Day. Some really awesome. Good movies. Last question, then we're going to jump into this week's devotional topic about this movie. Last year, we talked about the movie Rudy. To me, Rudy and Invincible, very similar. Very similar stories, true stories, underdog, making the team. What is the better story? What's more impressive? What jumps out to you more? And maybe you haven't seen Rudy in a while, but I think making it in the NFL as a 30-year-old is more impressive to me.
For sure. Talking real life story, no doubt. What he was able to do to play not for one season or for one practice, but for 3 seasons on this team and become a leader of this team is truly impressive. And the man in real life seems to be really impressive. I mean, I think for a little while he was also a coach for the Eagles. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know about that. I know he's been a public speaker.
Yeah.
I think he did some coaching.
I think he did some special teams coaching, not like an offensive coordinator or anything like that, but I think he did do some special teams coaching. Yeah, he's still alive. They say at the end of the movie he still lives in New Jersey with his family.
That movie was 20 years ago, Trip.
That's true, yeah. But I mean, I know he's still alive. I guess I don't know that he's still in New Jersey. But
he's still alive. Yeah. 20 years ago.
You're right. A lot has changed since 2006.
The movie gave us an update. Yeah, that update was 20 years ago.
That's right. Yeah, we need a more current update on where Vince is and how he's doing. I think Rudy is a better and more inspiring movie to me.
I agree. There's something about that. That's a really good movie.
That is an iconic all-time. Yeah. I mean, there are movies like Miracle and Invincible where you're like, this is just a solid sports movie that is in the mold of the all-time great sports movies. And then there are the all-time great sports movies. And I think that I would put Rudy in that category or very close to being in that category. So for me, it's the more inspiring movie. But certainly Papale's feat in real life is much more impressive.
I think so. Yep. Because, Rudy had a moment, but Vince actually became he was a captain on the team.
Yeah.
That's legit. All right. Let's bring this into our own lives here as we reflect on this movie. And what jumped out to me was here they are in South Philly, and it appears that everybody's struggling financially, work-wise, and then there's a strike at the local factory. And, Mark Wahlberg's character, Vince Papale, he's in the situation where he's a substitute teacher. Then he essentially gets fired from that. He's trying to pick up shifts at the bar. His buddy's the owner of the bar, Max. And all these guys are hanging out at Max's throughout the movie. And for the most part, they're struggling. They're just having a tough time. And then Vince Papale, his wife leaves him. So he really hits rock bottom. Mm-hmm. That's what we see at the beginning of this movie is you got no food, you got no job, pets' heads are falling off. But he loses his wife leaves. He's got nothing in his apartment. She took everything. He's got no money. And so he's really, down on his luck type of thing. And these guys, though, in subtle ways, do rally around him. Like they are there for him. And then there's the one character, which we'll talk more about too, who throughout the entire movie is the negative guy, the negative friend.
Johnny.
What's
your problem, Johnny?
Oh, Johnny. Johnny wears you out throughout the whole movie. But then once they hear that Dick Vermeil says, hey, we're going to have this open tryout, one of his buddies is really encouraging to say, hey, man, you got to do this. Like, you got to go try out. Like, you're faster than all of us. You show up and they play these backyard games, the backyard football games, wherever they are. They're like in a public field or something. But that's how Vince is staying in shape in the movie, is playing these buddy games out there and dominating. And so his friends know, hey, man, you could still play. Like, you at least got to go try out. And to your point earlier, even if it's for an hour. And so anyway, so what my big takeaway from this movie is how the community was all in with Vince, one, doing this, but really helping him and supporting him along the way, because there were challenges even as he was pursuing it, because he's trying out. He's got no job. He's got no money. So he's trying to be all in to make this team. But unless you make the team, you're not going to make any money. I did see his salary was $21,000. So even at that point, you're still not making the millions that we're talking about in the NFL today. But just overall, as you watch this movie, what did you make of sort of the community, the friendships, the group that was a part of this?
I loved it, man. I loved the portrayal of it. I mean, I think showing these buddies who have clearly been buddies for a long time, who are playing football together. I mean, I enjoyed the casting of the fringe group.
Yep.
I had to go look at like what some of those guys' names are. You know, his buddy Tommy that you're talking about, who's really encouraged him to go out to the tryout, is an actor named Kirk Acevedo, who is just in a lot of kind of supporting roles like this. Getting the right group of guys to play those guys was an important part of this movie. And I love the way that they portrayed their support of Mark Wahlberg, their rallying around him, and in a really understated sort of group of guys who are clearly tired. They're a little bit down and out. They're masculine, but they're discouraged. I just thought the portrayal of how they sort of rally around him and set their hope on him was really, really good. One of the things I enjoyed most about this movie.
And two, I think they thought, hey, man, at least go try out. Like, you can at least hang a little bit. And then I was like, all right, he made it to training camp. And then he makes the team.
Yeah.
So it's a wild ride. But I want to go through a couple scenes, and actually we'll do this a little bit differently than normal, but I want to talk about kind of one specific topic in the movie and then how that parallels our own lives. So I got like 3 or 4 kind of different things here. But going back to when Vince was struggling, and there's a scene where he shows up to his dad's house, and his dad played a fairly decent role in the movie. But just as a son thinking about relating to this, it's interesting. But here's Vince at 30 years old having to go back to his dad and tell him, here's how the scene plays out. He goes, "Pop, I never had to ask you this before, but I'm going to have trouble making rent." And his dad goes, "How much you need?" And Vince goes, $100. I can pay you back as soon as and then his dad goes, no, forget it. There have been times I've needed help too.
Yes.
This is family. We've had some rough times, you and me, but we stick on this one, okay? And then they started talking football. And so the humility that's required, it wasn't, a handout, daddy takes care of everything. It's not that type of thing. It's, hey man, I'm just trying to make it through. But the bigger part too for me was, again, he needed this money just to pay rent so that he could continue to survive, so that he'd be able to then go pursue this really cool opportunity. Because if that wasn't taken care of, he's just scrambling just to have a place to stay. And so that frees him up a bit. Like, all right, I got rent taken care of. Then his buddy Max, who he was working for, picking up some shifts at the bar, also fronted him some money too. And so that was another scene. But here in our own lives, there are times when others may come up to us and say, hey, I really need some help. I'm in a really tough spot. And sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's, hey, a place to stay. Sometimes it's, some other need that they're reaching out to you. And how we respond in those moments is a big deal. And especially as followers of Jesus, we've got a key response in this. And Jesus tells us this during the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:42, "Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you." And so when we've been given resources, especially money, and we're in a position to help somebody in need, and this can be a number of people, but I think in the context of the conversation we're having today, the buddies in our group, the family in our circle, whether it's a son that comes to us and then flip this around. How many times in our life have we been in that spot where we needed help and we had to go to our dad, we had to go to a brother, we had to go to a friend, we had to go to a college roommate and say, hey, I need some help right now. And how was that response? But But again, what his dad did for him then empowered him and enabled him and freed him up to then go for this. So we don't know that little help, that little boost, that little assist, what that can do for somebody as they continue on in their journey and what somebody maybe has done for us.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, God puts us God wants us to be in a network of sort of in the trenches type relationships. I mean, that's the phrase that came to mind with this group of guys literally out there playing football in the mud together. These are your like sort of in the trenches buddies, your foxhole friends who are there with you in the very worst moments. And I love that portrayal of him asking for help in the right way at the right time. And his dad just responding with a simple, like, I know what it's like to need help. I've been there. And so I will gladly help you out. I mean, the mentality among all these guys, and maybe it's a product of the community or the neighborhood that they're from, is that they're willing to use their resources. I mean, even just, I had the thought, like, the buddy who drove over to the practice facility to jumpstart his car, only to find out that he was kind of messing. Right.
We'll get to that.
Even that is just like to give your time, your energy, your resources to help out a friend without a second thought is really special. And I think sort of increasingly rare, almost like vanishingly rare. And it's interesting to wonder why we see that portrayed in some of these movies in like the kind of the 70s and 80s, and maybe it's not as common, or maybe I'm just imagining that, but that seems to be the case for me. And the really important point that you made there, Bryce, this is so important for me. I personally don't like to ask for help. I don't like to be in a place where I really need help. And I think we would all say, especially as followers of Jesus, when somebody comes to me for help, if I want to help them, if I'm able to help them out, I want to respond by helping them, serving them, loving them. But I would actually say that it's maybe just as important and in some ways more difficult to be the one who is asking for help, to going to someone else for support, for mercy, for your needs. And that is a really, really important skill in the life of community. Not just to be the one who always sort of wants to be at the top of the heap, like offering help to all the people below you, but who can lower yourself and humble yourself to ask for help from others. That to me is almost the more important lesson here. To be a healthy part of community like this, sometimes you got to be the one asking for help.
Absolutely. And, I think it plays out asking for prayer. Right. Like sometimes we don't want to humble ourselves or don't want to burden other people, and we're unwilling to ask for prayer. But when we need prayer, we got to have people that we can turn to and be willing to ask for that. I also think, during certain seasons of life, when you're a new dad, you need help, but you got to admit it. It's so funny that we're all this way, at least a lot of us. We're so arrogant as parents before our first kid. We're like, we're going to be great parents. It'll be great. And then you get into the trenches and you're like, oh, wow, this is really hard. It's even hard for a dad. And we don't always talk about it. And I've got a buddy right now who did. He was honest with me the other day. He's going through a tough time just as a new dad, trying to navigate marriage and trying to, things are changing. You had all this time, you had all this freedom, and now you got a little baby. And so you got to ask for help. And so are we willing to then be there for each other in those seasons, offer the help, offer the wisdom, but also sometimes like maybe the help is giving the parents a breather. Now I'm being convicted of this. Now I got to follow through on that. But I got to go give them a breather. But whatever it might be, like so this dynamic is just so crucial. And yes, this verse we're talking about, Matthew 5:42. A big part of that is if somebody needs money, and we have the ability to help them out, whether it's giving them or borrowing it, we've got to be willing to do that. But there are also other ways this plays out too that I hope is encouraging. But again, we've got to be in this type of community and experience this type of circle in our lives. And so if we don't have that, we've got to start building those relationships. But we saw this, really cool community in this movie, Invincible, where they were rallying around each other.
That's exactly right. You could tell they had a track record of being there for one another, of supporting and helping one another. And that sets the table for kind of the instigating action that takes place in this movie. In the same way, in our own lives, I think we have to do the work of building this sort of community, building these sorts of relationships, so that when the moment of crisis or when the big moment of decision comes, we already have some connection and some practice with what it looks like to help each other. And I remember years ago having a friend tell me, if you look like the kind of person that never needs help, the way that you'll know that is that nobody really ever comes to you asking for help, right? The way that we sort of are vulnerable with others and ask for help, ask for support, ask for, you said this really important, Bryce, ask for prayer is going to increase their likelihood to come to us and ask for those things when they need them. So it really is, it's mutually reinforcing. And you can just tell the guys in this movie had a network of relationships like that. And it makes me want to ask myself and my friends, do you have a group of buddies that are like your kind of in the trenches buddies? Your what do they call them? 3 a.m. friends, somebody that you can call in the middle of the night when that crisis comes. Do you have that group of friends? And if not, what does it look like to start to take some steps to build that community?
Absolutely. And listen, both of us have been in ministry and we've had to raise support. And so we have to, I mean, it's a crazy dynamic to work really hard and you then have to get funding to do that work. So I do all this stuff for Unpacking It, and I have to get people to financially support what we're doing. And so friends and family have supported me for a long time, and it means a lot. And so I'm very grateful for that. And so I've had to come to people and man, we've had tough months, tough years, and people have come through, and God's put it on their heart to give and to God's used people to show the way he provides for us. And it's been a remarkable journey. So I've been on it a long time. So I see this play out, and I've tried to be on the other side of that too, not just as a receiver, but as a giver too. And so we want to experience both sides of this.
Yeah.
To not always be the one that's always praying for everybody else, but have people praying for you. Give them the opportunity to experience that blessing, to pray for you, or to give and whatever it might look like. So, all right, the next kind of topic I want to talk about is, and you mentioned the 3 a.m. friend. In this movie, Tommy is Vince's 3 a.m. friend who shows up and does the car start. But Tommy's the one who really pushed Vince to attend that tryout. And a couple different moments, he made it clear, like, hey, man, I'm serious about this. Like, I want you to do this. And so then later on, when Vince finally made the team, the first person he wanted to tell was Tommy. And so, Tommy was the one that was, most excited for him. And then they got to share that moment to say, man, you made the team. Like, this is incredible. And so in our own lives, in what ways can we encourage and sort of push each other to go, you can do that. You can take that step of faith. I believe in you with God's help and God's strength, especially as we, trust in the Lord. But it's seeing something in other people going, man, you absolutely can go for that. You need to do that. And sometimes people just need that push, that confidence. They need to, just have another perspective because they're wrestling with fear and doubt and concern and reluctancy. And so, Tommy just helped Vince overcome some of that because Vince was very reluctant to go try out. At least that's how it showed in the movie. And Tommy said, no, you got to do it. And then they got to celebrate together, which is cool.
Right. Yeah. That's the positive side of what we're talking about, right? You need somebody who's going to be there to catch you in the low times, but also who's going to push you towards higher ground in some of the most important moments of your life. And those things go hand in hand, right? I mean, we got to be strategic about when we speak into somebody else's life and tell them to take the big swing, right?
Yes.
You can't say just every week do something crazy and just trust in the Lord and he's going to bring it through. You got to know a person well enough and care about them deeply enough to have your eyes open to the big moments when it's the right thing to say, hey, you know what? I think you should go for that. I think you should take that big step of faith.
And be prayerful about it too.
Be prayerful about it. Yeah, of course, all these things are related. But as we're helping one another, as we're being vulnerable with one another, as we're praying for one another, it opens our eyes to the moments when we can say, you know what? I think Bryce is ready to take that big step. I think Vince is ready to show up at that tryout, and I'm going to encourage him to do that. What we're talking about is encouragement. That's the big part of it's kind of the positive side of the way that we help our community, help our friends in situations like this.
Absolutely. And so to sort of further this and go a little bit deeper. So this idea that Tommy was there to, celebrate. And so he shows up, he thinks he's going to be there to start his car, but Vince just wanted to tell him that he made the team. Well, then from there, they all went and celebrated together. They're at Max's and they're having a big old time and everybody's there. And they, Vince is one of them. So Vince making the team in some ways is them making the team.
Yeah.
And they're all a part of this. They supported him along the way. They encouraged him. They cheered him on. But here's what happens, and we can relate to this. It's very easy to then all of a sudden, oh, wow, this guy's actually going to go play for the Eagles. And one of the cool scenes, too, is when they started naming all the players that he was going to be in the locker room with. And you're going to be playing with this guy and this guy. I got chills when I watched the movie. But you start thinking, you go, wait, I'm jealous. I'm envious. Wait, Vince gets to do that? And I'm still here trying to find a job? And so in our own lives, there are times when our buddies, when our brothers, when our friends get the cool promotion, get the cool experience. They meet somebody fun. Their child is the star athlete, the star student, the great singer, the great dancer. And we have a choice. Are we going to celebrate with them, cheer them on, be genuinely happy for them, or are we going to be bitter, envious, jealous, and think, well, that didn't happen for me. Why didn't it happen for me? Why does he get to do that? Does he really deserve that? And we start buying all these lies, all this negativity. And here's what Romans 12:15 tells us. Rejoice with those who rejoice, sharing others' joy, and weep with those who weep, sharing others' grief. So what does it look like to actually just be humble and embrace whatever season people are in that we're doing life with and we're in community with, that, man, we're celebrating with them when it's good, we're rejoicing when it's good, and we're weeping and we're right there in the trenches with them when it's bad. That to me is the beautiful picture. And but I also acknowledge it's really hard because you're like, man, I can't believe, gosh, I'm over here praying for something to happen. Nothing's happening and everything's going this guy's way. He's got, another win. And in some circles, there is a Vince, right? And Vince got, man, what a cool story for him. But what does it look like to actually be that support, to be that friend, to be along the journey with someone that is experiencing something cool?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so I've been a part of friend groups that are predicated on achievement and are sort of competitive, right?
Yep.
Like we've all been a part of those groups where everybody is sort of vying to be the most successful, kind of be at the top of the heap. And I think it's just inevitable that in kind of the world that we live in and some of the achievement culture that we live in, you will be part of communities like that. But those aren't the communities that are going to support and shape you in the most important ways. It's the groups that are mutually encouraging and excited about other people's successes that really matter the most, which is why when you watch the community that Jesus is trying to build with his first disciples, one of the things that he's always telling them is the one who is the servant of all, the one who is sort of makes himself the lowest and is the encourager and the supporter is the one who's the most like me, right? The one who most aligns with what I came into the world to do. And so again, this is not a popular thing to say in achievement culture, but so many of the achievements and accomplishments that we have in life, we had very little control over kind of the way that they worked out. It was God's grace. And frankly, from a worldly perspective, some luck that made one person have this streak of major victories and this other person have a series of failures. But the question is, can we be with community in one another, whether we're in a successful place or a struggling place, and be mutually encouraging and excited for each other? I mean, the thought that I had throughout this movie is this movie about a community of friends that rallies around an individual to help him accomplish something hard? Or is this movie about an individual who works his guts out to encourage and to lift up a community that's really struggling?
Give them hope.
Right?
That gave me chills, man.
Yeah. The answer is it's both, right? It's about how Vince is working hard to serve and support his buddies in the way that he is able to, and about how his buddies are rallying around him to help him achieve this goal on behalf of all of them. And that same dynamic plays out in the communities that we're a part of. We have to be about our individual growth and development and sanctification. We have to be about our individual Christ likeness to serve our community better And we need communities to support us so that we can grow in Christ likeness together. Those things are mutually reinforcing. They are not mutually exclusive. When you're a part of an achievement or an accomplishment-based group of friends, those things will be at odds with one another, the success of the individual or the health of the community. But when you're a part of a gospel-rooted, sort of grace-oriented community of people, they will be mutually reinforcing.
So good, man. That's so good. And really, the worldly successes, that's not what we're about anyway. But I do think there's still an element of, hey, cool, man, keep going. But more importantly than those wins that we're celebrating together, it's the rejoicing when God shows up, when God moves, when God does something in somebody's life that they are maturing in their faith. They are experiencing a breakthrough. They are getting a better understanding of his love and his truth. And those are the things that we really want to celebrate when they're using their gifts for God's purposes. When we're rallying around each other to pursue the mission of God, that oh man, the impact that you're having on that coworker at work, let's celebrate that. Not that you helped your coworker get a promotion to go to another job.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. No, you actually helped that coworker who had no idea who Jesus was. You introduced them to Jesus. Let's celebrate that together. And that's, to your point, that's the type of community that we long for as followers of Jesus, that we need to cultivate and live that out. And go, man, I was just reading in God's word this morning, and this is what God revealed to me. And then you have somebody to share that with, and they rally around you and go, that's awesome. Yeah. Keep going.
What is it that Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, that live your lives in such that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven? If we're trying to do good things and accomplish great things for our own glory, kind of among our circles of influence and our friend groups, right?
In a competitive way.
That will always breed competitiveness, right? Whereas if we're saying, man, I see something that the Lord is doing in Bryce's life, and I want to encourage him about that, but ultimately I want to glorify God for what he's doing in and through Bryce. Like that will change the ethos of a group of friends or a church or a community group, right? Where we're saying, I see the work that the Lord is doing. In the hard times, I'm going to intercede on your behalf. And in the good times, I'm going to praise God for the things that are going on in your life that he's bringing about in and through you. And that will really change the ethos of a community of believers who are living life together.
Gosh. Yeah, it's just, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So when you experience even a taste of it, and you find that group and that community, man, it's such a game changer. So it's one of my greatest passions here at Unpacking It, is for people to experience that.
Yeah.
And in the context of church and otherwise, and in whatever kind of setting that you're in. And we've got Fantasy Football Fellowship trying to cultivate that as well within fantasy leagues. So I just believe in that. But ultimately, yeah, we want to become like Jesus, and we want to do the things that he did, where you're healing people, you're helping people, you're serving people, you're a servant. Yeah. That's the mentality. So, I mean, God's healing them, but he's using us in those ways.
Yeah. The word that comes to mind for me as we're having this conversation is the word covenant, right? And that's one of those Bible-y words that maybe we hear it so often and we think about it so little that we don't really know what it means. But I think a covenant is a group, it is a community or a group of people who have come together in the interest of building up, serving, seeing the transformation of the other, right? So we live in a world where there's so many different contexts for consumeristic and transactional relationships, where the question is, what's in it for me?
Yeah. But
the relationships that we were made to really flourish in, to find fullness of life and to be transformed in, are the relationships where we say, what can I do for that other person?
Yeah.
How can I seek their flourishing and transformation? And that's really what this friend group in this movie was doing, is they were looking around at one another and they were saying, what does that guy need? And what can I do to help him out in his time of need? How can I push him on to the next great thing that God has for him? And those are the kind of covenantal relationships that we're made to exist in. And so many of us live a spiritually dehydrating life because we only exist in kind of consumeristic and transactional relationships with people.
Gosh.
I mean, Bryce, as we were, go ahead. What were you going to?
Well, and also I think oftentimes we live in a fake world where we're not vulnerable enough, right. and we're either trying to prove ourselves, or we're trying to represent ourselves in a way that I've got it all together. I'm good. Look how successful I am. And inside, it's not the case.
Yeah.
It's not the truth.
I mean, as we were preparing for this topic, as after I watched this movie and you teed up this topic for us in the show notes today, Bryce, I was reading in Luke chapter 5, the story of the paralyzed man who's lowered down through the ceiling to be healed by Jesus.
Just heard a sermon on it.
It's incredible because a group of friends who brings him to get him close to Jesus. And then there's this great verse right in the middle of that story in Luke 5 where it says I imagine Jesus looked up to the guys peeking down through the hole they had just made in the ceiling. And it says, Jesus saw their faith and said to the man, your sins are forgiven. And so a great practical question, a diagnostic question to take away from this conversation today is, do you have 4 guys that would hold the 4 corners of your mat to get you close to Jesus when you are in a time of spiritual paralysis, right? That man had a very obvious physical need. So many times we have significant spiritual needs in our lives, and you can kind of keep those hidden, and you can live sort of a lonely and depleted existence, or you can choose to share your spiritual struggles and your spiritual paralysis with a group of friends and ask for people to be the guys who are holding the 4 corners of the mat to get you close to Jesus, believing on your behalf. And it seems to be the case with Jesus that when somebody else believes on behalf of another, he's willing to respond to that request just as readily as he is to sort of an immediate one-on-one request to him. And so who are those people for you? Who are those 4 friends that would bring you to the feet of Jesus when you couldn't get there yourself is a great beginning sort of diagnostic question with your community. And if you don't have those friends, don't be ashamed about that. The world rages against us having those sorts of relationships. Don't be ashamed about it. Just name it and start to talk to some of your friends about what would it look like for us to have a community like this. And I guarantee you they're going to respond with, yeah, I want that too. Because we're all made for it. And so many of us feel that we lack it in our day-to-day lives.
It's awesome. Great story. Actually, I just read about that story
I love that story
in a book and also in a sermon. I heard it a couple different times. So that's good stuff. So we're going to wrap up the show here. The final topic, and I wrote about this, so you can read the devotional on unpackinit.com. But the last character was Johnny, and he was the negative one. And Vince shows up to they're playing a football game in the mud in the rain. It's kind of an absurd scene. But the takeaway for me was, and here's the line. Johnny goes, Vince, I don't know how much longer the Eagles are going to need you, but your friends could use a little help. And then Vince said, I got a game this weekend. I can't, Johnny, because he just drove by and he's getting ready for the game on Sunday. And what ended up happening was he plays in this game. He doesn't get injured, but even though he had a bad first game with the Eagles, the next game was good. And it was after he was with his buddies. It was after he sort of was grounded and reminded. And also, he sacrificed for his friends. He risked for his friends by being out there, and he helped them win this silly game in the backyard. But they needed him. They were counting on him. And there was tension with Johnny throughout the movie. This was the clear antagonist in the movie. Yet, because Vince sacrificed, because he showed that he cared, because he was there for his friend, even though he didn't deserve it, he was annoying most of the movie, there was a level of compassion and understanding that Vince actually demonstrated multiple times, because Johnny was going through a tough time himself.
Yeah.
And we need that. There are certain seasons where your friend is not going to be the kind of friend he needs to be. But if you've got a long history with them and there's, just kind of this built up love, that's what you can lean into.
Yeah.
There's
that scene in the bar where Johnny says, after all this is over, you're still going to be nothing. And a great little tidbit in this movie that we won't get a chance to talk about it really today, is the fact that he keeps the note that his wife left him about you'll never amount to anything as his motivation in his locker. But in the key moment, he tears it up and throws it away, right? A part of what this community is doing is they're choosing to believe better things about one another.
That's good.
In a world that's telling them you're nothing, you don't have a purpose, they're believing you got a purpose to me. You matter to me. You are something to me. And the key moment for Johnny is when he realizes, I need Vince. And Vince realizes, I want to be there for Johnny too. And it's because they're choosing to believe better things and to hope better things than what is currently true about their situation.
Absolutely. No, that's huge.
Yeah, the Johnny character is such an interesting kind of character trajectory. And at first I was like, I don't get why this guy's in this movie, but I think they bring it around in a really nice way. And of course, the great sort of culminating moment in the movie is when Vince, when he gets the tackle and he stands up and points up in the stands towards his buddies.
Great point.
Great movie. And he's honoring the community that has got him there. And they are so excited about what he has just done. It's kind of the iconic screenshot of the movie. But I love that part. And it brings kind of the whole thing to fruition. And Johnny's up there with him. He's just as excited as everybody else.
So cool. So the movie is called Invincible. What does that mean? What does it mean that he was invincible? And so here is my theory and takeaway, that I believe his community and the love of those people around him, their support, their encouragement, that's what made him invincible.
Mm-hmm.
And so in our own lives, I believe that we can operate with sort of that invincible mentality. And it's when we're driven by love. When we have the love of God in our lives, that the love that we experience is rooted in Christ, that we are empowered by the love of Christ, and then we are loving others in that way and receiving that love from others that's rooted in Christ. Man, we can do the impossible, the unthinkable, the amazing things in life for God's purposes, for his glory, that are a part of, growing his kingdom. That's how it happens. And it always comes back to love, really. But that's, to me, what's invincible here. So we saw a little glimpse, little glimmer from what we can gather in the movie. It's not, Christ-centered, but for our own lives here, as followers of Jesus, man, we want to live that love-driven life.
Yeah.
And so I'll leave us with just a reminder of what love is, described in 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. So love, invincible love. That's what we got. That's what we want. Way to go. Vince, Invincible.
Check it out.
Any final thoughts? That's it.
No, I think that's a great note to end it on, man. We want communities that are infused with love like that. And this movie is a nice little kind of preview, a little peek, a glimpse at the sort of community that we're made to be a part of.
Amen. All right, there you go. That's this year's summer sports movie series.
Fun series, man. I loved it.
Here on the UnPackin It Podcast, we will shift gears in August. We'll start talking NFL, maybe a little college football. It's football in the air. So we got a lot to discuss as training camps are starting up. But make sure you check out the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast as well. For Trip, I'm Bryce. I'm a sports fan who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well. And if it's not, I hope you'll reach out. Bryce at unpackinit.com. Would love to talk to you about that so that we can be sports fans who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time right here on the UnPackin It Podcast.